When you sit quietly and listen, you begin to notice how fragile everything really is. Life is like a drop of dew resting on a blade of grass. It shines for a moment, then slips away. The morning sun appears eternal, yet before long it sinks behind the horizon, and the darkness returns. We are born believing the things we hold, our youth, our possessions, our loves, will last forever. But every day reminds us of another truth. Nothing stays, nothing remains. Hair once dark turns grey, faces once full of light soften and fade. The voices of those we love fall silent. Suffering begins the moment we cling. From our very first cry at birth to the fear that lingers before death, life moves in a cycle of loss. The body grows old, sickness comes without warning, and at the end, no one can carry their treasures into the fire of impermanence. What we love can be taken. What we resist, we must face. And even when everything goes our way, the restless heart still whispers, it is not enough. This unrest comes not from the world outside, but from the storm within. Sit still for a few breaths and you'll see how your mind runs. One moment it pulls you to the past, the next it hurls you into tomorrow. It fills you with anger, with longing, with fear. Like waves in a stormy sea, it never rests. And so, you are tossed about, powerless against the current. But there's another way, a way of lifting yourself out of this drifting, a way of living by standards higher than the habits of the crowd. Imagine a boat without a rudder, spinning wherever the river takes it. That is how most people live, pulled endlessly by desire and fear. Yet, the moment you take hold of the rudder, the moment you decide to live with clarity, to discipline your energy, to protect the flame of your spirit, the current loses its power over you. Do not wait for tomorrow. Do not wait until the body grows frail and your time is nearly gone. Every breath is an invitation. Every step is a chance to begin. A single change in how you live, a single choice to stand in awareness can transform everything. It is like lighting one lamp in the dark. The shadows scatter, and what once felt endless is revealed to be small. From that moment on, people will no longer see you the same way, and you will no longer see yourself the same way either. The body tells a story that the mind refuses to hear. Every wrinkle, every scar, every ache is a reminder that this form was never meant to last. We spend years decorating it, feeding it, flattering it, as if we could bargain with time. Yet time never accepts a deal. Slowly, piece by piece, it takes what we believe is ours. The skin loosens, the bones grow heavy, the breath shortens. Even the strongest must surrender. There is pain in the flesh that no wealth can silence. There is sickness that no authority can command. A king and a beggar alike will tremble before the same fevers, the same decay. The body is not an enemy, but it is not a home either. It is a guest house and we are merely tenants. And no matter how we plead, one day the landlord of impermanence will knock on the door. And so we suffer when we confuse the body for the self. We say, I am this youth, I am this beauty, I am this strength. But what happens when youth dissolves? When beauty fades? When strength collapses? Do we disappear as well? If we have tied our worth to what changes, then we too will be dragged wherever change leads. Look at the mind, restless in its cage. It leaps from memory to worry, from anger to desire, never pausing long enough to rest. When you try to quiet it, it shouts louder. When you try to hold it still, it slips through your grasp. And yet most people mistake this chaos for who they are. They say, this is me. This is my thinking, my story, my truth. But have you ever watched the ocean during a storm? The waves crash, the winds howl, but deep beneath the surface, the water remains still. The mind is the same. On the surface, it is wild, unpredictable, dangerous. But beneath lies a depth untouched by the storm. Few ever dive deep enough to discover it. We suffer because we live only on the surface. We chase every wave, every thought, every fear, as if it were the whole ocean. We run after desires or we run away from pain. But either way, we are running. And in the running, we forget to be still. If you want to know peace, you must stop confusing yourself with the waves. You are not every passing thought. You are not every shifting mood. You are the awareness that watches them rise and fall. You are the depth of the ocean, not its restless surface. To realize this is to begin to free yourself. You no longer panic at every storm because you know it will pass. You no longer cling to every calm because you know it too will pass. Instead, you sink deeper into the quiet beneath where nothing can be taken from you. This is not escape. It is not denial. It is the only way to live without fear. The body will still age, the mind will still move, but you will no longer mistake their changes for the end of you. You will see them for what they are, visitors, and you will remain the host, unmoved, unbroken, infinite. There is a kind of wealth that cannot be seen with the eyes or held in the hands. It is the wealth of energy. Every thought, every word, every action either preserves it or spends it. And most people spend it carelessly, scattering it on distractions, arguments, indulgences, and fears. By the end of the day, they are exhausted, not because they worked too hard, but because they never learned how to protect the fire inside. Think of energy as a flame carried through the wind. If you guard it with your hands, it grows stronger. If you leave it exposed, it is blown out. When you waste your attention on trivial conflicts, when you let every voice pull you into debate, when you scroll endlessly through empty amusements, your flame grows weaker. The tragedy is that many mistake this weakness for life itself. They believe it is normal to feel drained, restless, without direction. But energy is the foundation of all transformation. With energy, the body heals. With energy, the mind clears. With energy, even the heaviest burdens become light. Without it, even the smallest task becomes unbearable. And so, the question is not only, what should I do with my life? But also, how do I stop wasting the force that gives me life? Discipline is the guardian of energy. Without discipline, every impulse steals a piece of you. You say, I will rise early, but when comfort whispers, you remain in bed. You say, I will eat wisely, but when craving calls, you surrender. You say, I will focus. But the moment distraction knocks, you open the door. Each time you break your word to yourself, the flame dims. True discipline is not punishment. It is not a harsh whip or a cruel master. Discipline is an act of love. Love for the person you are becoming. Love for the clarity you deserve. When you practice discipline, you're telling yourself you are worth protecting. And slowly, with each choice, you become stronger than your urges, wiser than your moods, freer than your fears. Raising your standards means deciding that the old way of living is no longer enough. It means refusing to settle for mediocrity, refusing to accept habits that drain your soul. Most people live by the standards of the crowd. They ask, what does everyone else do? What does everyone else believe? And so they become copies, echoes, shadows. But the moment you raise your standard, you no longer walk as a shadow. You walk as yourself. To raise your standard is to declare, I will not waste words on anger. I will not waste days on regret. I will not waste years on living someone else's dream. Instead, I will guard my energy as a sacred trust. I will keep my discipline as a sacred promise. I will lift my standard as a sacred path. This is not arrogance, it is responsibility. When you raise your standard, you give others permission to do the same. When they see you refuse to gossip, they too learn silence. When they see you refuse to sink into despair, they too find courage. Your life becomes a signal, a fire on the hill, showing another way. But make no mistake, this path is not easy. The crowd will laugh. They will call you strange, rigid, too serious. They will try to pull you back because your rising reminds them of their own chains. Yet in time, those same voices will quiet. They will respect what they once mocked, and some, secretly, will follow. Every great change in history began with one person who refused the comfort of the crowd. One monk who left the palace. One thinker who questioned tradition. One soul who said, this is not enough. There must be more. You too can be that soul. Not for glory, not for fame, but for freedom. Raise your standard in how you speak, and words will heal instead of wound. Raise your standard in how you eat, and food will nourish instead of poison. Raise your standard in how you think, and thoughts will liberate instead of enslave. Raise your standard in how you love, and love will free instead of bind. In every moment, the choice is yours. To scatter energy or to gather it. To break discipline or to strengthen it. To live by habit or to live by standard. And if you ask, where do I begin? Begin here. With the next breath. With the next word. With the next choice. Because the smallest act done in awareness is greater than the grandest plan left undone. Protect your flame. Guard your promise. Lift your life. From that moment, you will not only change how others see you, you will change how you see the world. And the world will feel different, not because it has changed, but because you have. Compassion is not weakness. Compassion is the courage to let your heart stay open in a world that would rather see it closed. To feel another's pain without turning away, to hold another's suffering without rushing to escape it. This is strength greater than any weapon. Many think compassion makes you fragile. In truth, compassion makes you unbreakable because nothing is outside of your love. Without compassion, discipline becomes rigid and cold. Without compassion, standards become arrogance. Without compassion, energy becomes self-centered, a fire that burns only for itself. But with compassion, discipline becomes a gift, standards become inspiration, energy becomes a light for others as well as yourself. Wisdom and compassion are not separate. Wisdom sees clearly, compassion acts kindly. Wisdom without compassion can become harsh and prideful. Compassion without wisdom can become blind and reckless. Together, they are like two wings of the same bird. Only with both can you truly fly. What is wisdom? It is seeing things as they really are, not as your fears or desires paint them. It is recognizing that everything is impermanent, that every form changes, every sound fades, every thought dissolves. It is knowing that clinging to what changes is the root of suffering. Wisdom is not about clever words or complex theories. It is about simplicity, seeing directly without distortion. And what is compassion? It is meeting that truth with love. If wisdom sees impermanence, compassion responds, then let me love now while I can. If wisdom sees suffering, compassion responds, then let me ease it wherever I find it. If wisdom sees emptiness, compassion responds, then let me fill it with presence. Imagine two people, one who sees suffering but feels nothing, another who feels suffering but cannot see its cause. The first may understand but will not heal. The second may want to help but will only deepen the pain. But the one who sees with wisdom and feels with compassion, that person heals the world simply by being. Compassion is not pity. It does not look down on others. Compassion looks across and says, I see you, I am with you. It does not demand repayment. It does not keep score. It does not ask, do you deserve my kindness? It simply gives, because giving is its nature. And wisdom is not cynicism. It is not cold detachment or mocking laughter. Wisdom is the stillness that sees clearly and therefore no longer panics. Wisdom is the clarity that knows where to step and where not to step. It is the lantern in the dark forest. It shows the path, but it does not force you to walk. When you join compassion and wisdom, your presence changes the space around you. People feel calmer without knowing why. They feel safer without asking for it. You may speak only a few words, but they carry more weight than hours of noise. This is not magic. It is the natural effect of a heart that is both clear and kind. If you want to transform a conflict, bring compassion. If you want to dissolve confusion, bring wisdom. If you want to lead others, bring both. The leader who has wisdom but no compassion becomes a tyrant. The leader who has compassion but no wisdom becomes a fool. The leader who has both becomes a guide, one who frees rather than binds. But remember, compassion begins with yourself. Too many try to love others while despising themselves. They give and give, but secretly, they hate the one who gives. True compassion cannot grow from self-hatred. To be gentle with others, you must first be gentle with your own heart. To forgive others, you must first forgive yourself. To lift others, you must first stand without crushing your own spirit. And wisdom too begins within. It is not about collecting more information, but about unlearning illusions. You do not need to know everything. You need to see clearly the few truths that matter. Everything changes. Everything is connected. Everything returns. From these truths, the rest of life unfolds. When compassion and wisdom join, life stops being a battlefield and becomes a garden. You stop asking, how do I win? And start asking, how do we grow? You stop fighting to be right and start working to be whole. You stop measuring worth by victories and start measuring it by peace. And then you realize something astonishing. When you live with compassion and wisdom, you do not only change yourself, you change everyone around you. You become the calm in their storm, the warmth in their winter, the light in their night. Not because you are trying to, but because you cannot help it. A candle cannot help but give light. A flower cannot help but release fragrance. And a heart that is wise and compassionate cannot help but transform its world. Presence is the art of coming home. Most people live as exiles from their own lives. Their bodies stand in one place, but their minds run everywhere else. They eat, but do not taste. They walk, but do not notice the ground beneath their feet. They speak, but do not hear their own words. They sleep, but never rest. Life slips past them like water through open hands. To live in presence is to finally close your hands, not to clutch or to grasp, but simply to hold what is here. The taste of food, the sound of rain, the breath rising and falling, these small moments contain all the richness of existence. Yet they are overlooked, dismissed as ordinary, while the mind chases after 1,000 other things. The truth is simple. Peace is always present. It is not hidden in a distant land or locked in some secret teaching. Peace is the quiet space between thoughts. Peace is the pause at the end of a breath. Peace is the stillness in your chest before the next heartbeat. You do not need to invent it, you only need to return to it. Returning to peace is not withdrawal from life. It is not apathy or indifference. It is participation without being lost. It is love without possession. It is work without exhaustion. When you are present, you do not drain yourself by scattering into yesterday and tomorrow. You stand whole in today, and today is always enough. Think of presence like standing in the eye of a storm. Around you, the winds may roar, the waves may crash, the world may pull in every direction. But at the center, there is calm. The calm does not end the storm, but it gives you the strength to endure it, to move through it without breaking. Presence does not erase pain, but it transforms your relationship to pain. Instead of being crushed by it, you hold it. Instead of running, you stay. Instead of fearing, you see. In presence, joy becomes simpler. A smile from a stranger is enough. The warmth of the sun on your skin is enough. A single breath taken in awareness feels like a miracle. You stop demanding the world to impress you, because the world itself, as it is, impresses you endlessly. And in presence, suffering becomes lighter. You no longer pile stories onto pain. This should not have happened. This always happens to me. This will never end. You feel the pain, but you do not multiply it with judgment. You allow it to be what it is, sharp, heavy, fleeting. And because you allow it, it passes more gently. Presence is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It is something you return to again and again. Every time you notice you're lost in thought, you have already come back. Every time you take one conscious breath, you have already returned. Presence is not perfection, it is practice. To live in presence is also to live in truth. Because when you are here, you cannot hide behind illusions. You cannot pretend to be somewhere else, someone else. You face what is real, your feelings, your fears, your hopes, your wounds. And in that honesty, healing begins. Peace is not an escape from reality. Peace is reality. Once you stop fighting it, the waves will still rise, the seasons will still change, the body will still age, but you will no longer resist. You will flow with them like a river flows to the sea. And in that flowing there is freedom. The return to peace is the return to yourself. Not the self made of names and roles, not the self built of success or failure, but the deeper self that has always been here. The self that watches without judgment, that feels without clinging, that loves without fear. When you live this way, the ordinary becomes sacred. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Listening to a friend becomes prayer. Walking to the market becomes pilgrimage. Each act, no matter how small, carries the fragrance of eternity. And when death finally comes, as it will for us all, presence allows you to meet it without regret. You will not say, "I did not live." You will not say, "I missed my chance." Because you lived fully in each breath, each step, each day. You did not postpone life waiting for tomorrow. You touched the miracle of life in this moment, and this moment, and this moment again. That is the gift of presence. It gives you back your life before your life is gone. It teaches you to die without fear, because you have already learned to live without absence. Freedom is not the absence of responsibility. Freedom is the discovery that your spirit was never truly bound. The chains you felt around your neck were woven of fear. The walls you believed surrounded you were made of your own thoughts. When you see clearly, the prison dissolves, and you realize you were always standing in an open field. True freedom is not doing whatever you want. That is another kind of prison, a slavery to impulse and craving. True freedom is being able to choose with awareness to say yes or no without being dragged by compulsion. It is the freedom to act not because you are pushed by fear or pulled by desire, but because you are guided by clarity. The path of freedom is the path of awakening. It begins with seeing suffering, then understanding its cause, then discovering that it can end, and finally, walking the way that leads to its end. This is not a theory. It is a map written in the lives of those who have walked before us. It is a fire carried across centuries, a flame passed from heart to heart. Every teaching, every discipline, every practice is only a lantern. The light is meant to show you your own steps. But no lantern can walk for you. You must take each step yourself. The step of letting go, the step of forgiveness, the step of courage, the step of love. And what you find as you walk is not something new. It is something ancient inside you. A stillness deeper than silence. A joy that does not depend on circumstance. A flame that does not burn out. This flame is not given by the world, and so the world cannot take it away. It is eternal because it is your very nature. Imagine holding a candle in the night. The darkness does not end, but it no longer terrifies you. Imagine walking with this candle into the unknown. Each step is lit, not far ahead, but enough. This is what it means to live awake. Not to control the world, but to carry the flame that makes the journey bearable, meaningful, even beautiful. And as you carry it, you realize you are not alone. Others walk with their own candles. Some flames are strong, others small, some nearly extinguished. And when yours burns bright, you can share it. You can light another's wick without losing your own flame. And so the feel of night fills with points of light, until what was once darkness becomes a sky of stars. This is the destiny of compassion, discipline, wisdom, and presence. They are not separate practices but threads of one rope. Together they pull you from the river of confusion onto the shore of freedom. Together they weave the bridge that carries you from fear to love, from restlessness to stillness, from death to life. When you look back, you will see that the world has not changed much. The seasons still turn, people still laugh and cry, joy and sorrow still visit every home. But you will have changed. And because of that, everything is different. You are no longer pulled apart by every wave. You are no longer broken by every storm. You stand as a mountain, you flow as a river, you shine as a flame. And in your presence, others remember who they are. Not because you teach them, but because you remind them of their own light. This is the greatest gift. To live so fully in your freedom that others begin to believe in their own. So let this be your vow, to guard your energy as sacred, to hold your discipline as love, to raise your standard as devotion, to walk with compassion as your step, and wisdom as your sight, to live each day in presence as if it were the first and the last, and to carry within you the eternal flame, through darkness, through storms, through time itself. For one day, your body will fall and your story will end. But the flame is not yours alone. It belongs to life itself. And if you have lived awake, your flame will light others, and others will light others still, until the whole world burns with a fire of clarity and kindness. This is the path of freedom, not a promise of escape, but a way of belonging. Not a flight from the world, but a deeper union with it. Not a dream of immortality, but the discovery that what you truly are was never born and will never die. Walk this path, and people will never see you the same. Walk this path, and you will never see yourself the same. Walk this path, and you will know at last. You were free all along.